Confusion over the booster shot question, a potentially tragic end to the Gabby Petito case, and streaming platforms rule the Emmy Awards. Monday Need to Know. Let's go. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need to Know podcast for Monday, September 20th. I'm Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Hi, Carlo. I don't know why I said your name weird. Hi, Carlo.
Oh, happy Monday, Jill. How was your weekend?
My weekend was good. I ran and completed my first 10K, I guess, in like 5 years post-baby. I had back injuries. I used to be a big runner. I used to be a big marathon runner in a previous life before you and I knew each other. And then I had to stop running because I hurt my back. And then I got married and I got pregnant. And I remember, it just was a huge accomplishment for me. And I don't want to go on too much about it because I remember post-baby, I couldn't even walk on, I remember trying to walk on the treadmill, like once I got the okay to do workouts. And I couldn't even do a half mile. I couldn't even do like 2 minutes. And then, so obviously your body eventually builds back up, but I slowly started running again when I moved out to the burbs. So this was a very big deal. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, fantastic. Congratulations, Jill. That's 10K. That's 10 more Ks than I ran this weekend. But excellent. Was it out in Long Island?
Yeah, it's Cow Harbor. It's a really fun race in Northport on the North Shore of Long Island. My husband came with my daughter, and my dad came. It was fun.
Oh, mazel to you, Jill. That's great news.
You're
making me feel like maybe I can get back into the swing of things a little bit.
That post-baby body.
Exactly. By the way, before we start, just very quickly, thank you to everybody who joined us on Friday in our YouTube live chat. We had another good turnout, had a lot of good stuff to talk about. We got some good Love, Hate, 8 suggestions from listeners, so we'll do that again this Friday. But thanks to everyone who logged on.
Yes, it was great. Okay, let's get to the news here. Dr. Fauci now downplaying confusion over who's eligible for a vaccine booster after the FDA's advisory panel on Friday decided against recommending booster shots of the Pfizer vaccine for the general population. The panel voted unanimously, though, to recommend boosters for people 65 and up and other vulnerable Americans, but stopped short of signing off on President Biden's plan for a widespread national booster campaign. It was supposed to start today. Fauci said the recommendation is not the end of the story and that a final FDA decision on the booster question is expected this week.
I'm so confused. I really am. If you don't understand what the current status of the booster question is, you're not alone. Because as we say here, it's our job to understand this, and I don't even really get it. Meanwhile, we're back up to 2,000 deaths a day for the first time since last February, early March, which is really staggering to think about, given that we have widespread vaccines now. The United States now 45 on the list of countries with at least one shot given for the population. We're going to fall behind India, actually, probably in the next few weeks, maybe in a month or two. In some ways, that's actually a good thing because, India really ramping it up now in their vaccines after getting hammered so hard in that Delta wave. But, United States, one of the few countries in the world that is physically capable of vaccinating our entire population. And we're now we just can't push through on this last bit.
I look at Israel. I'm confused, okay, because I look at Israel, which has been a few months ahead of us this whole time in terms of vaccination, and they've mostly used the Pfizer vaccine. And at this point, they're recommending a vaccine booster for basically everyone over 16, I believe. So what are they seeing? What data are they going off of that we don't have here in the U.S.? Or is it more political or just a moral question in the U.S. where we're saying, you know what, these vaccines, this booster would be better off going to somebody else, high risk or whatnot, or anybody else in a different country that maybe doesn't have access to the vaccines just yet. Important to note, though, 65 and older, plus people who are considered high risk, and also even they're saying perhaps even teachers and people in close contact with kids, et cetera, they'll be recommended to get that booster shot. So it does impact a lot. It's still recommended for a lot of people. It's confusing, and it goes back to just what we've been dealing with since the start of the pandemic, which is mixed messages. There are even people saying, look, Biden came out, universal boosters is a pretty popular idea. And remember, Biden came out with this at a low point in his presidency when the withdrawal from Afghanistan was going disastrously. So it was part of this in his political calculation. To have him come out with that, but think about what that does. Now all of a sudden it's back to total confusion, mixed messages.
Right.
I know a bunch of people who already have had boosters though, so
I've heard that.
They're easy to get if you want them. So, I mean, I don't know.
Not that you should do it, but I think all you have to do, you could just go in and be like, it's my first shot, I guess.
Or talk, right? I mean, look, I guess it's like talk to your doctor. I don't even know what to tell people. And again, the FDA has not made a final decision yet. This is just the panel that is advising the FDA. So we'll see what decision they wind up coming up with. Okay, a sad update on a story that admittedly we have not really been covering on the podcast. Authorities say that a body found in a Wyoming national park is, quote, consistent with the description of Gabby Petito. She is that 22-year-old woman who went missing while on a road trip with her fiance earlier this month. The man, Brian Laundrie, has been named a person of interest in Petito's disappearance, but now he is missing. He hasn't been seen in almost a week. An autopsy to confirm the identity of the human remains and hopefully the cause of death is scheduled for tomorrow.
Jill, I admit that I had not been following the story very closely until this weekend when I saw that the boyfriend, or the fiance, I should say, split town, which is usually a pretty good idea that something went afoul here. This case has gotten huge attention, not just from the usual morning TV circuit, which is where these sort of missing white girl cases tend to really be everywhere, but it's also all over social media, which is kind of interesting. YouTube and TikTok sleuths have been working sort of as like ad hoc detectives in this case. It's unclear if they've actually helped crack it. That would be remarkable if true, but I have to say, it's just kind of a little weird. It's like a little bit unsettling to watch a story like this turn into kind of like grist for the content mill online with like it's hashtags and these like TikTok stars getting in on it. It's just a little weird. I don't know. Maybe it's a good thing. Maybe it's like the more help, the better, right? I don't know.
Well, so she herself is an influencer.
Right, yeah.
And I just went on her Instagram page. She has 760,000 followers. I don't know how many of those are followers that are new, since the past week or so since she's been missing. She's actually from Long Island, so this story is getting a ton of play in my neck of the woods. But yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to see how it plays out, and it's like the true crime. It's like a true crime thing, happening in real time, but just quite sad. And we'll see, what the end result is here.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost certainly going to be a case of domestic violence against a woman that was not caught in time, as these cases almost always are.
All right, let's talk a little politics here. Both houses of Congress back at work this week to kick off a 3-week legislative marathon. The different kind of marathon than the one I was talking about at the top of the podcast.
Less fun. Yeah. Way less fun.
And less work, too. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of work that goes into these political marathons. Democrats are under tremendous pressure to deliver on President Biden's infrastructure bill, and then also that separate multi-trillion-dollar social spending bill, all while avoiding a government shutdown and a looming fight with Republicans over the debt ceiling. So now Senator Joe Manchin throwing a wrench into the Democrats' plans, reportedly saying he wants to pause the $3.5 trillion spending package until next year. I don't know, I don't think we saw that coming.
No, I didn't. I saw Axios broke this story last night. Manchin, of course, he is important because he's the up or down vote on that bill getting passed. They need him. So whatever he says pretty much goes. Whatever the number ends up being, it's not going to be $3.5 trillion. Now, it had always been my assumption that this bill would get done somewhere in the $2 trillion range, but maybe not so fast, right? As you mentioned before, Biden is not particularly strong politically right now, which means that this whole thing, he doesn't really have sort of like the political capital capital, I guess, to keep this thing on the track. So that bill could collapse. And he, Manchin saying they could do it next year. It's hard for me to imagine that a bill that big, that influential, would pass in an election year in Congress. Manchin, by the way, this is courtesy of the New York Times this morning. He makes 3 times his Senate salary on dividends from a coal investment, which, by the way, is completely legal, right? We've talked about this before, how insane it is that senators and Congress people can make money in the stock market, basically. I mentioned that, though, because Biden has said that he wants this bill to include aggressive climate policy. So put another way, our climate policy is sort of in the hands now of somebody who makes money off the success of the fossil fuel industry, which to me is crazy. Meanwhile, the Senate parliamentarian ruling that the Democrats can't use the budget reconciliation process to push through sweeping immigration reform that would include a pathway to citizenship for Dreamers. That was another big setback for the Democrats that happened yesterday.
Carlo, I'm so glad that you mentioned what you did about Senator Manchin and the coal investments, and it's my pet peeve, and it's not just him; it's all of them. Republicans,
Everybody.
Democrats, it's across the board, and it's legal, and it's wild that it's legal. But unfortunately, the only people who could make a law that would make that illegal would be the lawmakers, and they would never do that because it would hurt them.
Right.
So here we are, and you know what? And in fairness to Joe Manchin, if what bothers me about some of these huge trillion dollar packages is like they're the kitchen sink. If climate change is the crisis that it is, and I would argue that it is, do something separate on it. You know, you're throwing it in with after you've already passed an infrastructure package with sort of this like human infrastructure with 1,000,001 other things. They could separate some type of climate change bill if they wanted to.
If they got rid of the filibuster, they absolutely could do that. But yeah, just back to quickly on the senators making money off of their investments. I mean, look at what happened in the beginning of COVID, right? There were senators who were getting briefings on how bad the pandemic was going to be in February of 2020, and then trading off of that information while we were just sitting around. You and I were like, this COVID-19 thing seems like it might be a big deal. Huh?
I was scouring Home Depot for N95 masks, basically, and you were like, you're not going to need them.
I'll never live that down, nor should I.
All right, let's talk about immigration, which we briefly mentioned above there. The federal government over the weekend started a mass expulsion of Haitian migrants who were congregating at the southern Texas border, deporting hundreds of people by plane to Port-au-Prince and closing part of the U.S.-Mexico border, where a makeshift camp had been growing to more than 14,000 people. There are reports now of women giving birth. It's just crazy when you hear the anecdotes. Like, they're basically camped out. It's 100 degrees, even hotter. Yeah. And then they're like wading through the river to go back to Mexico to get food and things like that, and then coming back. It's wild.
It's just, as I said the other day, it's just, the sheer desperation that these people must facing. Now, these people are facing the Biden administration conducting these deportations under the Trump-era public health order known as Title 42 from the CDC. That's the thing that gives the government basically the authority to just quickly expel migrants without giving them the opportunity to apply for asylum, which is usually how this thing is done. A judge has actually ordered the administration to stop using that Title 42, but they're doing it while they appeal. But a huge show of force by Customs and Border Patrol there over the weekend, which shows you that, the White House just has no appetite for bad immigration headlines right now as they're trying to get all this other stuff done, plus the pandemic, right?
Yeah, I was listening to an interview with somebody who's on Border Patrol, and he said he's never seen anything quite like this. And a lot of these Haitians apparently are saying, you know what, we'd rather just go into Mexico than go back to Haiti, because it's just, we've been reporting about the political crisis there, natural disasters. So again, this is a human story, right? And they're quite desperate to just get out of that country. Switching gears, the Pentagon has acknowledged that the drone strike we talked about the other day, the one that purported to have taken out an ISIS terrorist plotting an imminent attack on the Kabul airport in the last days of the Afghanistan evacuation, they are confirming that it did actually kill an innocent Afghan aid worker and 9 members of his family. The Defense Department called the case a case of mistaken identity. They say it was a horrible tragedy of war, but they are still standing by the intelligence that triggered the strike.
Yeah, not quite sure I understand that. Pretty obvious that intelligence was bogus. But I'm glad that we've been covering the story. It hasn't been getting a huge amount of coverage, which how many times has this must have happened over the last 20 years of that war, right? And didn't get any coverage at all, probably. I mean, the only reason the Pentagon even came out this weekend and acknowledged this huge F up is because of that New York Times expose that got attention last weekend. So again, more evidence of why hopefully us being out of there means that this will happen less. But I mean, I don't know. Okay, it's an apology. Better than nothing, I guess. But not a lot of comfort for this poor, the members of this family who are still alive, who were first tarred as ISIS supporters, and now just have lost their the patriarch and 9 other members of that family.
But I think it also just points to this difficulty that we're going to have to try to be, we talk about our drone capabilities of waging a war via drone. It's not as easy as it sounds, to just, we'll use intelligence plus drone strikes.
Right.
Well, this is sometimes what happens. All right, let's talk TV. Wait, did you watch the Emmy Awards last night, Carlo?
I caught some, but I admit that I sort of caught up this morning. Did you watch?
Okay, so I watched it as much as I could before I had to go to bed. Yeah. The streaming services dominated last night's 73rd Annual Emmy Awards. Netflix's The Crown took Best Drama and a handful of the top acting awards. Gillian Anderson won for her portrayal of Margaret Thatcher. Olivia Colman won for her role as the Queen. Josh O'Connor and Tobias Menzies also won for their portrayals of Prince Charles at different periods of his life. The Queen's Gambit, also a Netflix production, won Best Limited Series. And Apple's Ted Lasso took the Best Comedy Prize. Jason Sudeikis won his first Emmy for Lasso. Kate Winslet won for Mayor of Easttown. As for snubs, Disney's WandaVision had 23 nominations, but went home empty-handed. Cedric the Entertainer, he was the host, and I thought he was awesome. And it was great, and I think you might be talking about it, but I just thought even from the get-go, it was a lot of fun. The open was so funny, it was great. So I was into the Emmys, surprisingly. I thought I was going to turn it off after 2 minutes.
No, absolutely. I mean, I did see that his Cedric the Entertainer's opener, he did this sort of like song and dance number that paid tribute to Biz Markie, who died recently. It was kind of nice to see such sort of like a warm, irony-free monologue that kind of stayed away from politics and the preachiness that made the Oscars so unbearable a few months ago. Remember that? But yeah, the bottom line on the Emmys is what you said. Streaming is the name of the game now. Cable is second fiddle. Broadcast networks are dinosaurs on the verge of extinction, basically, at least when it comes to, awards. Tobias Menzies, by the way, I think he played Prince Philip. I think I may have wrote that he played Prince Charles. He was fantastic. I know we talked about The Crown months ago when you got me to watch it, and I just absolutely devoured it. But I was actually hoping that they were going to give that award, the supporting actor award, to Michael K. Williams for Lovecraft Country, given that he has just died. And remember, the Emmys snubbed The Wire during its entire run. I believe that The Wire didn't win.
I didn't know that.
I believe that The Wire didn't win in a single Emmy Award while it was on television, which is amazing. I mean, we're almost done with it now, and it is truly one of the best shows I've ever seen.
And it stands the test of time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But I think you just actually hit the nail on the head. I couldn't figure out why I was watching it. And because, I mean, at 8 o'clock it started. That's usually, it's hard for me to be interested in anything. Oh, yeah. And at a certain point, I had to just say to myself, like, okay, you have to get up at 4:30 tomorrow morning, turn them off.
Right.
And I think it was just, they brought fun back to the Emmys. It was like, you're right, it wasn't so preachy. It was just good old-fashioned entertainment, and I appreciated it.
People want to see celebrities in cool outfits, and they want to see them get acceptance speeches for shows that they like to watch. Really, the formula's not that complicated. And
I think because we've all spent the past year and then some just watching TV and streaming all of these shows. I basically saw everything. Normally that's not the case.
Well, that was the thing with the Oscars, right? It's like, some of these movies I'd never even heard of, let alone seen, right? But these are like, I know this show. I know this show. Yeah, exactly.
All right, we are going to leave it there. That is what you need to know for Monday, September 20th.
All right, guys, see you tomorrow, which I believe is the first day of fall.